Vanakkam, Professor Ramu Manivannan. We are glad to have you here on the air from Geneva.
Vanakkam, Mr. Raj. I'm equally pleased to speak to you.
So, what brings you here to Geneva this time? Because I understand that the 29th session of the UN Human Rights Council is in progress, but apparently there is nothing in the UN's agenda on Sri Lankan issues. So, what brings you here this time?
The first and foremost reason is that I'm here for the side event regarding the impending the process of related to the investigations regarding Sri Lanka, and so that was the side event. And then the more importantly, though there are no any there are major issues being placed on the agenda or on the table of the HRC 29 session, but I look at this session as critical because of both international community is looking at Sri Lanka about how to move forward with the international investigation process, and Sri Lanka is looking at the world governments and exploring how to duck itself from the possible investigations that could be launched against.
So you have been to Geneva many times, and especially during the time when running up to the resolution. And the resolution called for a comprehensive investigation and a comprehensive report. And unfortunately, the report got delayed in March due to the political situation or political change, I could say, in Sri Lanka. So, what was your feeling then, and what do you feel now after meeting missions?
I have a strong feeling that it is then, now, or in future, Sri Lanka has to respond and has to answer. I mean, that's my it's my gut feeling that Sri Lanka has to respond, has to answer to the world community for what happened during this period, what you called as the final war or the Elam Four, and to be very precise, from January 8th of 2008 to the May 2009. But it is much more than that. And then the as far as the postponement is concerned, initial period about when it was likely to be postponed, I was disappointed, and more than my disappointment, I was worried. And now I think it has also given a time for the international community, and more particularly the Tamils also, how to go ahead about this thing. And because we are talking about all this postponement and changes and anticipation against the background of the elections, the presidential elections, and which has kind of which has brought about a dramatic change in the worldview of the international governments. That is, we need to take that into our consideration.
But in some segment of the UN, or maybe I would say the international community, they feel that an internal mechanism is a viable option now after the regime change. And in fact, there are voices from certain parts that already an international investigation has been conducted by the UN, so the report's going to be out, and what they are pushing for an internal implementation or internal mechanism. What do you say to this?
Let me say one major concern. I want to place my concern on record. If internal mechanism could work in Sri Lanka, then it could have worked on many more occasions in the last say 65 years. And because a nation must have certain precedents, certain conditions, both a political culture and institutional mechanism, and as well as about the constitutional mechanism as well. Sri Lanka does not have any of this. And then there were more than about 13 commissions were held, and none of the commissions ever indicted even a single person as guilty. And if they were pronounced as guilty in two certain observations, and no one was punished. And given the history of Sri Lanka in this manner, and even after 1977, 1983, major ethnic riots, and then the war, what you call is the criminal violence against the innocent Tamils in different parts of Sri Lanka, more particularly in Colombo. And if given this kind of history, how can we trust a domestic process? This is my foremost concern. And the second factor is that if elections are a very important factor as a change and the hopefulness for the international governments, and let me say in 1977, the elections that Jayawardene said that he wants to address the Tamil issues, and then at the same time the Tamil mandate was based on the Vatukotai, and then for subsequently of a sweeping mandate was given to the Tamil based on in favor of Tamil question. Then in 1980s and every election, and then even Rajapaksa said in 2010 that he wants to solve and he want the Tamil aspirations. I mean within that paradigm, but nothing has ever been delivered. And then, if electoral changes have always been subjected to the power change, power transformation for the Sinhalese and leadership and political leadership and elites. But as far as electoral changes have never resulted in political transformation in Sri Lanka vis a vis the Tamils. The political and legal environment remains the same.
So you feel that there will be an international investigation in terms of a tribunal or in terms of a referral to ICC or some sort.
No, what I feel is not going to be the major. That is not the way that the world governments see. I mean, there's a difference about like how there were interested parties and countries who wanted to see the change in the way they see that geostrategic politics. Now they feel that it is coming up in that direction. Therefore, they might not be too keen to push forward the international investigation process. But at the same time, they need to know that, like, the approach they are undertaking is not going to bring about a permanent change. There's no change is permanent, but even positive changes that could result in what you call a considerable fair justice being addressed, nor a political change being permanent. And why I say this fact is that and the hybrid solution or like domestic mechanism, if they resort to domestic mechanism, they are completely surrendering not only the question of justice for the Tamil justice for Tamils, and they are surrendering, but they are also surrendering a political instrument of future negotiation to Sri Lanka vis-a-vis the political and strategic interest of the countries involved. And thirdly, about like hybrid mechanism with the domestic process, domestic investigations combined with the presence of international judicial intervention or monitoring, and that could be a kind of a compromise formula. It could ultimately emerge as one, but domestic process is not going to fetch any result for the Tamils or for the international community.
I think it's valid to ask you this question as a political scientist or a professor in a political science discipline. Do you feel that Human Rights Council is highly politicized now, and then countries' elections and electoral results are maneuvering council mandates?
It's absolutely. I mean, I have no hesitation in saying that, like, the United Nations or the Human Rights Council, like, political priorities govern the outcome of the decisions. And then the political priorities also determine the voting pattern and behavior. But at the same time, like, we need to ask what is the extraordinary concerns of the international community that can bind everyone together? If you ask me that question, that there are concerns, but nations see themselves in a different plan, different platforms. But even under such kind of divisions, the United Nations and the international institutions like HRC and the Security Council have been able to bring about resolutions regarding, say, for instance, in case of the Korea in the 1950s, like uniting for a peace resolution in 1950s, and then subsequently, like more recently, of the Syria resolution about the Syria and Security Council resolutions. My question is that, like why not Sri Lanka? That's the question I want to ask about, like does it not deserve? I mean, not because like Tamils don't have the political influence, but the seriousness of issue. If you only prioritize by political influence of the major powers, or what you call the superpower factor is also not the unilateralism and cannot be allowed to prevail. and then like of the interest of the few and major powers alone, if it is steered for too long, the system will collapse.
The overall, like if you say that in this context, the US, the India, as well as international community, mainly the Western countries, they have brought down this resolution together in a way, if you really look at it in 2014. But now that when that was brought about within the Tamil activist or the Tamil organization, there was one unified call for an international independent investigation. Now that we could see concurrent processes are emerging, like for example the South African initiative, and there is different calls from some segments for an internal and external kind of a combined method, and then some calls for outright rejection of internal mechanisms, complete external mechanism. And also very importantly then, as an author of a book recently published, that Tamils also want to see justice for the genocide, ongoing genocide. So, on this context, there are different voices coming from different parts. So what would be your message and what was your feeling in terms of the Tamil advocacy or Tamil lobby this time around in Geneva?
Let me anchor my position with one and very universal concept. What happened in Sri Lanka, what happened to the Tamils, that concept is it's universal. And in terms of justice for the genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity. Now, my surprise is that any community or people who suffered a violence of this magnitude, how can they speak in different voices? This amazes me about the Tamil society. And then the next thing is that, like, if they are speaking in different voices, then it clearly indicates the personal and then, like, prejudiced personal self interest of the people and groups involved in steering this, or falling in as a kind of a prey to the strategic manipulation of the Sri Lankan government. And because no government, no people can see reason after suffering such violence of this magnitude can settle for anything other than a political solution and seeking justice, not in simply about do they not understand what domestic mechanism in Sri Lanka means? And I certainly believe they know the history of Sri Lanka better than I do. But at the same time, I want to ask them, give me a reason about how and where in Sri Lanka and when the domestic investigation process has worked. Now you are offering that to Sri Lanka.
So as final word, do you want to say anything to us?
Thank you very much. My best and very sincere aspirations is that the Tamil community all over the world should speak in one voice and in unison, and not for any reason, but for the simple political solution and for justice seeking. And what we are born, and then we have to bear and carry the torch for justice.
Thank you very much, Professor Ramu Manivannan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raj. Thank you very much. Wish you good luck.